There you go, friends. Doc South here. We have now the final episode, at least for now, of The City Garden. Yes. A tale actually based somewhat on fact. Yes. Yes. I'll explain maybe after we do the reading. Let's see if I can do it in one take. I doubt it, but we'll give it a whirl. Okay. The City Garden, Part 6. The pitcher on the mound thanked me for returning the ball. Of course, all his teammates and the other side were enjoying my many stares of disbelief. I watched the next pitch. It was an underhand delivered low and inside. They were playing softball, but with a giant P. Yes. The batter swung his string bean. It was a hit way out to left field. Going, gone. Yep, it went right over the left field sludge pile and bounced off this big green Quonset hut and back into play. The runner was thrown out at third. Normally, I would have hollered something about the ump being blind. But this time, though, I found myself staring at the green building just beyond the sludge pile. By now, I was learning to suspect anything that was colored green, and that building was green. John pulled up in the cart and told me to hop on board. Off we went. Friends, you may not believe this, but the building on the other side of that sludge pile was just one really big watermelon, sitting in a field full of watermelons. Watermelons the size of tractor trailers. John said, John said this was a county project for the county-wide civil defense department. In the case of a major disaster, these watermelons could be called in to provide much-needed water for drought-stricken communities. All you had to do was stick a pipe in them down near the bottom, and turn on the pumps. Of course, watermelon is also known for its nutritional value as well. These melons were marked as reserved for emergency use only. They look pretty tasty sitting there in the Carolina sun. It almost made a person wish for a hurricane to pay us a visit. I heard there was also talk about the possibility that the largest melons could be used to safely battle forest and brush fires. The plan that was being bandied about was to load as many watermelons as possible into C-130s, waiting down at Johnson Air Force Base with the engines running. The planes would then head out over the fire, maintaining a safe altitude as they flew above any air turbulence caused by heated updrafts. Bombardiers could then calculate the proper approach and aim for the thickest and highest flames. At just the right moment, they'd signal melons away and the watermelons would rain down from above as they headed for splashdown. The fire wouldn't stand a chance. Huh? Yeah. Another possible safer plan would be to have massive bulldozers push multiple melons into a kind of fire retaining wall. It was hoped that the heat of the fire would cause the water in the melons to turn into high-pressure steam. The pressure buildup would then cause the melons to explode violently. The blast force would blow the flames back onto themselves and also into the areas that were already burned, thus turning them into harmless water-soaked ash. What'd you call it? Flare-ups, right. The watery blast that flew out from the cooler side of the melon and away from the fire zone would send out a protective coating of water and melon chunks. The guys back at the lab were trying to perfect a steam whistle that would warn firefighters that a melon was about to blow. In other words, you'd have the steam whistle on top of the watermelon, right? Volunteers could insert them. The crews would need at least 60 seconds to run for their lives. It was hoped that watermelon pits that were not charred in the flames could be covered with a mixture of sewer water and sludge to create, all in due time, a natural fire break as fresh melons grew in the wild. Fingers were crossed on that one. I asked John if there were any plans to grow giant pumpkins in the sludge pits. John nodded and said that there was some action in that direction, but they would have to take the effluent from an entire settling tank offline to grow an orange monster. Back at the lab, Huang estimated that the darn pumpkin would probably outweigh the Great Pyramid at Giza. The vines alone would stretch all the way from Rocky Mount to the north and Kinley to the south. We're talking darn near 35 miles. Yeah, and if the darn vines got all the way to Route 95, well, they could tie up traffic for weeks on end. John thought it sure would be great to grow a pumpkin you could see from the moon with your naked eye. Still, some scientists were afraid that there might be trouble with the adjustments to the Earth's axis and potential problems with tides going crazy. In a secret session of the state legislature, it was decided and decreed that feeding treatment sludge to a giant pumpkin would result in hard prison time. However, growing a miniature pumpkin in the sludge pit would be allowed, providing the resulting pumpkin would be used to humiliate Yankee farmers in giant pumpkin competitions at county fairs up north. There was talk about growing a giant pumpkin using Grandfather Mountain as a kind of planting mound. It was figured that the resulting pumpkin would be great for tourism, and there'd be a booming boost to the state economy, roasting the pumpkin seeds and selling them to tourists after harvest time. There would have to be a safe way to tie them to the top of tourist minivans. John heard that there was a knitting mill down in Clinton, North Carolina, that was working at figuring out the design and specs for a rooftop netting that might safely hold the giant seed in place safely. All in all, it was going to take a bit longer to figure out a way to exploit the giant pumpkin crop. The best scientists out in Chapel Hill were on the case. Progress was coming along nice, but, well, all this was going to take time. Pumpkin wars were discussed. Pumpkin battles, I guess, might be the best way to put it. The thought of opposing teams of farmers from different counties in the Tar Heel state jousting their best pumpkins against opposing countywide teams did receive some strong thoughts. The idea was a kind of pumpkin crash, where two opposing pumpkins would be rolled down into a wide valley. The idea would be for the pumpkins to crash into one another, and the pumpkin that doesn't fall to pieces in the collision would be declared the winner. That pumpkin would then be taken to the pit area, where limited repairs would be made to its hide. After that, it would be pushed up the mountain to compete in the second heat. It was determined that bleachers alongside the run would probably be too dangerous to the public. You can imagine a runaway pumpkin, the size of a bulldozer, tractor trailer, would be, a little, yes. To avoid certain death, the whole event would have to be photographed with strategically placed video cameras. Helicopters filming from overhead would be allowed only limited access when the actual run began. That way, disaster would be avoided if the pumpkins were to commence to bounce uncontrollably and perhaps take out a chopper. You can imagine. The event was still in the planning stages, and there was a fairly strong chance that the whole event would be vetoed in the state senate back in Raleigh. Just not sure they kind of hard to figure out what to do. And you can imagine if a disaster happened. Well, raspberries taste great. And what would be better than a giant chilled raspberry for your afternoon snack on a hot North Carolina afternoon? The plan in the lab was to work out a way to quick chill that most delicious of berries when a side benefit was discovered. It turned out that frozen raspberries, once the center core is removed, make wonderful football helmets. Yeah, a side benefit is they not only keep a player safe from concussions, but they also allow a football lineman to stay cool as a cucumber during the formidable heat of an early Carolina fall football game. After the game, with a little thawing, the berries would become a nourishing and refreshing snack that would easily hit the spot and replenish much-needed electrolytes. Yeah. It was only in the planning stages, but John mentioned that there was talk by some hotshot scientists over in Raleigh to figure out a good way to use giant mushrooms for various emergency scenarios. They grow so fast and also grow nicely in the dark. This characteristic would allow them to become overnight shelters of her folks who might have lost their homes to tornadoes or hurricanes. If nothing else, the average giant mushroom would provide overhead shade from the sun and rain. Giant cabbage leaves, again grown at the treatment plant, could easily be draped over the tops of the mushrooms to provide additional shelter and a bit of privacy for folks left homeless. The cabbage leaves could be brought in overnight by civil defense crews. The mushrooms themselves would be fully grown by sunup, and if they were planted in time for sundown, again, it would be super horticulture to the rescue. And it all started right here at the city treatment plant. Man, go figure, huh? I'd seen about as much as I could take for one afternoon. I had that huge cherry tomato to turn into the world's biggest tomato sandwich. I was low on mayonnaise, so I'd have to stop by the Piggly Wiggly on the way home. My bread at home might be a bit stale too, plus I'd need more bread than just one loaf. I figured I'd better get a loaf or two of Sunbeam as well. That cherry tomato was going to make a bunch of sandwiches. I figured I'd be best off heading to the squad hall and see if the duty crews were in the building and hungry for lunch. The boys there could treat for Coca-Colas and Lance crackers, and I'll bring the sandwiches. On my way back to the car, I almost stumbled over a Brussels sprout out in the lawn. I decided to walk along the front path instead. It was paved with slate sidewalk stones. At least that's what I thought they were. Turns out they were watermelon seeds. Well, there you go, friends. We'll catch you later. And I don't know. I hope you enjoyed that story. Actually, it is real quick. We got a second or two. This story actually was based somewhat on fact. I did, when I first moved down to Wilson, North Carolina, one of my rescue squad members, who I believe, we'll say his name was John. It wasn't John. But he worked at the treatment plant, and he invited me over, and he was showing me around the place. I was into water treatment of boilers, so it made sense to go take a look. And it's funny, but behind their giants, they had these big mounds of sludge, dried sludge, and I think it was taken away as fertilizer. I don't think it was hazardous or anything. But the guys in the treatment plant planted a garden. And you should have seen. They honestly did have tomatoes the size of a head. And I think they were cherry tomatoes. I mean, oh, God. And I remember being so impressed. Green peppers, watermelons, they all were very, very healthy plants. I don't know if they went to this county fairs with these things or not. I don't know. But they had a sure winner there. Anyway, I thought I'd say. Anyway, so yeah, actually, in a way, it is based on of course, I did exaggerate a little here and there, but basically, yeah. Huh? Cool. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. We'll work on another story for you as soon as possible, okay? We'll catch you later. Bye now, friends. Thank you. God bless.